And welcome to another off-season edition of the Top Hockey Podcast in DFW. Thank you, Stars fans, for making us that. It's Spits and Suds, and joining me, as he usually does this offseason, is Sean Shapiro of EP Ringside, of Shap Shots, of the book We Win Here, and of course he also writes for D Magazine. And just wanted to get another quick plug in for Sean as the season approaches, that his Shap Shots is a subscriber page, and it would be great if you could sign up for the monthly subscription so we could pay Sean's bills, right, Sean?
Yeah, you're good plug. Thank you again, Gavin, for that. That's always great. I appreciate it. And it's today is the first, Gavin. Today's the first time we've recorded in a couple months where not the first time, because there was a couple other things here and there, but I actually got to watch some professional hockey today. Not in person, but I was right now. If you're needing a fix right now for if you're listening to this and it's still Thursday and you're making your plan for Friday and you need something to sneak onto your screen so your boss can't see that you're watching hockey or something like that. The Champions Hockey League right now has games. Their round 3 of games started today. There'll be games tomorrow. They're streamed right on YouTube. It's free. And earlier today, I was watching the game between a team from Finland, Tampere, which is Tampere, which is the hometown of Roope Hintz, and against Adler Mannheim. And the reason that should interest Stars fans is the goalie for Adler Mannheim is Arno Tefens, who was the goalie they took in the 5th round of this past draft. And I don't know if Arno Tefens will ever come over from Germany. He's a 5th round pick. He's a goalie. Who knows? He's already 21. He was an older guy when he was drafted, but it's a good chance to watch some hockey and watch a guy that is technically in the Stars prospect pool after this most recent draft.
And for those that are listening and wondering what Sean is talking about as far as the Champions Hockey League, it's somewhat similar to the sport of soccer in that it is 26 clubs, 6 leagues, and the International Ice Hockey Federation, and it features top teams across Europe. So you really are getting some quality hockey.
Oh, for sure. It's basically, it's this year, it's currently going on, obviously, without the Russian teams because of what's happening in Russia and the Ukraine and everything like that. But yeah, it's pretty much it's arguably, it's some of the best competition you'll see in Europe. You're always getting pretty good teams. Mannheim, for example, is the best German team. It's a little bit easier to judge Mannheim when they play teams from Finland like they did, or from some other things, because they tend to be a little bit top heavy in the German league. So it was good. It's a good way to watch hockey, get to know some stuff. This was truthfully the first time I've actually watched Tefens's game all the way through, start to finish, and it was obviously a pretty good first impression, which is they lost 2-1 in a shootout, but he played great. The only reason that they didn't win was the goalie for Tampere played incredibly well. And it was also kind of funny, Gavin. Some old friends from Stars land, Jyrki Jokipakka was playing in the game.
Really?
So it was Jyrki Jokipakka is now playing for Mannheim in Germany now. So kind of a funny small world type thing watching the game. And Max Gilden, who people who are from the DFW hockey community might remember, Max played for I think he spent about 4 or 5 years in the AHL, played for the Dallas Stars elite team, like the U16, U18s and everything like that, and now went over to Europe this year after playing in Europe. So little DFW connection all over the place right there.
I was just looking up, speaking of what, another old Stars name, is Joel Lundquist still playing?
Mm-hmm. I believe he still is.
I think he is too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, we forget about these names, but then we don't realize like Joel Lundquist has gone on to a extremely successful career in the Swedish Hockey League. So that's cool. It's so cool, the growth of hockey internationally. It was always kind of there, but now it's truly exploding. I mean, you had mentioned Germany, Sean, and I just think that's so cool because, I mean, occasionally you'd get a player, and now like hockey's a thing in Germany. Hockey is becoming more and more popular in Austria and these countries. Great Britain, people are playing hockey now. So, while these leagues aren't prevalent like the NHL, at the same time, it's great to see the growth because that means more prospects and more people and more selections internationally.
And a good kind of comp is for what's happening with German hockey, and this will connect well to DFW actually, is we kind of saw the people in DFW obviously saw what Dirk did for the Mavs franchise, right? But you look at his impact on basketball in Germany, and 2 years ago when Leon Draisaitl won the Hart Trophy, he was the first German or second German after Dirk to win the MVP of a North American league. And so you kind of see what Draisaitl, what Tim Stützle, what Moritz Seider, there's a bunch of JJ Peterka. You've got a bunch of these German guys that are kind of really helping raise the sport, and it's good to see. I think I don't think Germany will ever be in that realm of USA, Canada, or anything like that. But if you can add them to that pool of the Czechs, the Slovaks, if they can be competing in that group, all of a sudden you get a pretty good international tournaments get more fun when the bottom doesn't drop out as far as it used to in international hockey. And it's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So the hockey writers, speaking of internationally, they wrote a story this week and they talked about trade partners with the Washington Capitals. The Washington Capitals find themselves in some cap restraint issues, and Evgeny Kuznetsov's name has come up, and they were saying a good trade partner would be the Dallas Stars. Now, for some background, Kuznetsov has 2 years remaining, $7.8 million. Last year, 81 games played, 12 goals, 43 assists, 55 points. His career, 680 games played, 551 points. Sean, tell me this, because I know plus minus isn't as much a factor as it once was, but plus 49 for your career. Yet last year, what glares at me is a minus 26. Was that more of a team than a player issue?
Yeah, Washington wasn't good last year. I mean, Washington wasn't good. They missed the playoffs. Washington's kind of weird right now, and I wrote something about this right now, and I'm not saying Washington's not trying to win games, but Washington has become, and you and I had talked about this with Crosby and Malkin at some point, and it's Washington right now. It feels way more centric on helping Ovechkin get to Gretzky's record that it feels on winning another Stanley Cup. That's just kind of the vibe you get about the Capitals right now, where they want to get Ovechkin to that Gretzky record on goals and everything like that. I know they say they want us to remain competitive, but that record seems to be overshadowing everything, that record chase, which is fine. It's like, I mean, everyone thinks about how great, I mean, the Cubs and Cardinals were one of the most watched teams in baseball in that summer of '98 or whatever in the Roger Maris record chase. Neither of them were actually teams that won the World Series. So it's still good for the sport, but not necessarily good for winning. My thing when it comes to Kuznetsov is, like you mentioned, a trade partner and everything like that. Where, like, for lack of a better word on this, how are you going to make him fit?
Yeah.
Next season, how are you going to make him fit next season? He's not an expiring deal. He's going to make 7.8 against the cap next year, the 24-25 season, and the Stars, even next year, even if the cap will go up a little bit, I don't really see where I don't really see the space on that, because you're in theory, but basically you're doing this by bringing in Kuznetsov. If by bringing in Kuznetsov for next year, and obviously there would be another piece you'd have to trade out to get it done and everything like that.
And they did point out, Sean, that Washington would have to retain 50% of his salary, which makes me wonder, why would Washington want to do that?
Why would they want to do that for a year? Like, what would that? Okay, let's go down.
And it would be done at the trade deadline, so it wouldn't
what
be.
What was the hypothetical offer? I guess give me that.
That's the funny thing. They just put a trading partner, and they just talked about Dallas's needs, and I don't know if it's a great fit, unless you have injuries on your top three lines. But with prospects coming, I just don't. At some point you have to insert Stankoven, you have to insert Maverick Bork, you have to insert some of these players, and I just don't think it's a good fit. And then you say to yourself, what do you have to give up? Because if I'm Washington, I'm looking at some of those Stars prospects, but more importantly, I'm looking at draft capital.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't
I
work.
agree.
Like I don't see how it works. I mean,
I agree.
I would be more intrigued if there was hey, here's the proposed offer, but it's so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here's another one that I wanted to compare to the Stars. Jake Sanderson, the 21-year-old Ottawa defenseman who had 32 points last year, 4 goals, 28 assists in 77 games, signs an 8-year, $64.4 million contract this week. Sean, is this a situation where Ottawa is saying, we got a good one and we're betting that he gets better?
I actually think this is a really smart piece of business because this is one of those deals where I think it may feel like an overpay in the 24-25 season.
Which to some, and I know it's different because Heiskanen showed a lot more talent, but there were people at the time that said, wow, that's a rich contract early.
Yeah. And there maybe 25, 26, but if hypothetically, if Sanderson was bridged, and by bridged, for anyone who doesn't know, that means basically kind of a short 2-3 year deal that buys you further into RFA rights and bridges the player to their next to the big deal. If Sanderson had bridged, he would have been able to make more money than this in the 26-27, 27-28 season forward. And so Ottawa, I think it's a smart piece of business for the long term, where Ottawa gets, when the cap will go up, Sanderson's value will be going up at the same time, and he'll be locked in for 8 years. I think it's a really smart piece of business by Ottawa. I think Sanderson, you can't get a guy making $64 million over the next 8 years, nothing to sneeze at. I wonder for him, I'd be fascinated to be a fly on the wall in the conversation for him and his agent of how they came to this, because I've talked to others players who have intentionally taken shorter deals or extensions and things right now recently, because they're trying to get to that magical window of the off season of 2027 when the cap's going to go up and we're going to have I don't remember the year, Gavin, but do you remember when the NBA cap went up and all of a sudden it was like the 10th guy on the bench in the NBA all of a sudden was making like ridiculous amount of money just because the money had to go somewhere?
Yes.
That's what was going to kind of happen in the summer of 2027 or depending on 2027 or maybe 28, depending on the cap, depending on the kind of some cap complicated things that get figured out. But so a lot of players were kind of buying their way closer to that. And it's one of the reasons like DeBrincat signed the 4-year deal with Detroit. Looking more at it, he's buying his way to that spot. And with Sanderson, he's set for life. $64 million, if you're smart with it, can be generational wealth, and that's great for his family. But Ottawa also avoided some potential cap hurt because of him 3-4 years down the line by getting this done now. So good piece of work by Ottawa. Some people will look at his play next year and be like, you're paying that much for this guy and whatever. And this is one of those deals where Ottawa, I think, will have the last laugh on this one, for particularly the Maple Leafs fans who are trying to dunk on the deal on Twitter.
So now we're looking at Shabbat, Chikrin, Sanderson. It's a pretty good defensive lineup for Ottawa, and they have some good forwards. And we'll get into this in another podcast, but I want you to ponder, like, team in this year in the NHL playoffs and team that's going to be out. And Ottawa, to me, I got to do some more digging, Sean, but man, that's a fringe. They have some really good talent up there.
Yeah, I don't think they're in yet. Like, I look at the East, I look at that division.
It's brutal.
It's brutal. And I think they're at the spot where if a team from that division is going to jump in and replace any of the four that were in last year.
Buffalo.
It's Buffalo, yeah.
Yeah.
Ottawa, to me, they're going to take... I really like their Tarasenko signing, actually, because I think the Tarasenko signing, I think they did a nice piece of business of they're basically going to buy themselves an asset at the deadline. I think they're going to be good enough they'll be at that spot where they'll be able to make a decision at the deadline of, are we good enough to be in it, or are we going to sell Tarasenko, who's a pending UFA? And I think I think this year is kind of the year that starts to set up Ottawa for playoff runs in the future. But right now, I just don't think in the East and the current setup, this is the year for them right now.
But it is a good reminder, Stars fans, these are the games that are great value for you to go to. You're going to see excellent talent in Ottawa. You're going to see excellent talent in Buffalo. I understand, like, some of these games, like, I'm just trying to think of a team when Pittsburgh comes to town or when Vegas comes to town. Those are like high price games, but just understand some of these fringe teams have some amazing talent, and you can see some awesome players on the ice. So that's just a FYI that I like to throw out there, because I was saying that about Carolina a few years back, and look at them now. Okay.
I mean, in the base level, right? The base level of NHL talent is so high.
Yes.
So like it's really never been higher. And so I do have something funny. I
like funny.
So I was just randomly thinking, you talk about games that are odd and everything like that. So the NHL preseason starts 2 weeks from Saturday. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks from Saturday. It's great. A week from today, we will have actual Stars prospect hockey in Traverse City, Michigan. Great.
Love it.
But 2 weeks from today, and this does relate to the Stars, I promise everyone. 2 weeks from today, NHL preseason hockey starts, and it involves, and it starts with around midnight. Actually, it's around midnight on Friday night. Around midnight on Friday night, the Coyotes and the Kings are playing in Australia, right? At a Rod Laver Arena, where the Australian Open is. And just already cool and odd in the same NHL game in Australia. But if you look at the NHL schedule for that day, the day of September 23rd, the Arizona Coyotes, Gavin, play 3 games that day. They play a game in Arizona, they play a game in St. Louis, and they play a game in Wichita. All on the same day.
Wow.
It's happening. And it is and I have my good friend Craig Morgan, who covers the Coyotes. I had him give me a bit of the rundown of how the Coyotes are going to handle this. The NHL roster will be in Australia. The AHL team will be in St. Louis. The PTOs, extras, and some of the top prospects will be in the game in Wichita.
Wow.
And coaching staffs and then obviously all the main NHL coaching staff will be in Australia, but there'll be AHL and ECHL coaches will be getting calls up for preseason to do that. This connects to the Stars, because, by the way, one day later, Arizona plays the Stars at the Cedar Park Center, or HEB Center in Cedar Park. So,
which one? Which Coyotes team's showing up?
It's either going to be that first Stars preseason game is going to be either against the Coyotes AHL team or the PTO / prospect team. So just if you are going now, obviously, if you're going to that preseason game in Cedar Park, and I think the Stars will, I believe the Stars are going to do right by their training camp fans, and if they don't, we can call them out on this podcast on it. I believe the Stars will do right by their Cedar Park fans and make sure it's a good mix of actual NHL big names. Like, I would imagine they'll get there'll be some prospects, but I think they'll make sure that I would imagine a Jamie Benn will play in that game. I would imagine they'll try to do right by their fans in doing that. But just fair warning, the Coyotes are not bringing the powerhouse. So,
and quickly on that, I'm really happy for Cedar Park / Austin that they get training camp. I love what that Texas organization does. It's terrific. And you wrote the book We Win Here, and there's a lot of stories about the relationship between Texas and Dallas. So I love that, and I love how close it is. I just wonder though, Sean, from a media perspective, is it hurting the club at all by moving away from Dallas for training camp at a time when it can be argued that the popularity of this Stars team has reached heights that it hasn't reached in a few years?
I see your point. I do see your point. I also would argue that the Stars have, with how open Stars practice is, anyone can walk up and go and see the Stars and everything like that. I think it's okay to do stuff like this when you do things like that, because it's not like, oh, well, by doing this here, there's not going to be any chance for me to take my kid to a practice in Frisco or something like that. No, they still practice, and you can go to watch practice any day you want. So I think I do see your point. I think from a media perspective, and we've talked about the Stars media landscape, I think it does hurt your media coverage a little bit of training camp because it's a weekend in Texas, and if the Stars were doing training camp in Frisco, you get the local TV station to pop by because it's just kind of a little part. It's, hey, I only 20 minutes of your day. But when it's in Austin and Cedar Park, you're not getting it. So I see your point on that. I don't think it's a really good question, actually. And the fact that
I think the argument too is that since we've lost writers from The Athletic and elsewhere, that I think the people that do cover the team will be there.
Oh yeah, I think that's the other thing too. Like the people who do cover the team will be there, and and you have I think it's good to extend that stuff.
Agreed.
I mean, they did the Stars. What was it now? It's been about 5 years or so, I think, since they did the training camp in Boise, Idaho. And I don't think they'll ever do that again. I don't think they'll ever go to training camp in Boise, Idaho.
They did some Fort Worth too.
Yeah. I don't mind them doing Fort Worth either. That's something that I think works too. I have heard I've talked to people from the Stars before who they like the idea of, if you're going to do training camp away, they want to do it either like this, where it's in-state in Cedar Park, where they already control the facilities. That's an important thing to know, that they don't control facilities in Fort Worth. The Stars run the Texas Stars. And so if they were going to do something in Fort Worth or do something in Boise or do something else like that in the future, I've heard that the Stars would have kicked around the idea of like, hey, let's do a preseason game in Boise, but it would be like the 4th or 5th preseason game, which would be like 4th or 5th preseason game where you've already done most of your cuts, so you're only traveling with like 30 guys or something like that, as opposed to bringing the whole squad down there. So the preseason game in Cedar Park will work this way. There'll be training camp stuff throughout the weekend. It's just a couple days. Players who aren't going to play in that preseason game on that Sunday will just practice on Sunday, and then there'll be the game that night. So it'll be I'm happy for the people of Cedar Park that it'll be there, and it's good. But the Coyotes are just don't think you're seeing Clayton Keller or Logan Cooley or anything like that, because they'll be in Australia. So
it's fascinating. One thing we are keeping an eye on for you, the Stars fans, and also NHL fans, is the Spectrum ESPN deal. And I know right now the focus is college football, but I'm worried from an NHL perspective, because to me, the NHL deal with ESPN/Disney and with TNT, I think really worked well as far as added coverage that the NHL deserved. And there's a lot of customers right now that don't have ESPN. I'm certainly one of them. And, I just hope, and I have ESPN Plus, but I just hope that they can get this resolved before the beginning of the NHL season, because I think it's good for the NHL to be on ESPN, not necessarily for the games, but for the added coverage that ESPN provides.
This whole thing, Gavin, too, like this goes beyond just hockey. It's all sports, right? Obviously college football is the big one right now, but we're at this spot where if this doesn't get settled the right way, or to the more normal way, this could be the flashpoint that takes ESPN fully over the fully direct to consumer.
Correct.
Which would be both good and bad, right? Like you're like, oh, that's great. I only care about sports, but all of a sudden it starts to. Cable bundles are weird, and I know this is going to be, just stick with me for a second on this. Like,
I'm with you.
So, like, it's people will be like, oh, well, I'd love to pay. Like, it's the reason the cable bundle works is you are helping bring down the cost of everything that you're not watching. You might not be the person who watches the Food Network or whatever, but if someone wanted to get the Food Network by themselves direct to consumer, it would probably cost like $25. It would probably be like a $25 channel, right? Where it's like that's probably the type of cost that would be. It's like, oh, I only watch the Food Network. That's $25. I only want to watch I don't know, TNT or whatever. Like, I only want these channels. By having the bundle brings the price down, even though I know cable packages already feel super expensive. But if all of a sudden you're like, okay, we go fully a la carte, and you say, I like 6 channels, and those channels start costing between $27 to $35 a month themselves for just 6 channels, you're like, oh boy, this is a problem. And so this is one of those things where I hope this gets settled, because ESPN going to direct to consumer, while in the immediacy would solve some problems some sports fans talk about, it would create some other problems in the entertainment world that would be difficult to figure out.
Well, the other contractual snafu that I know a lot of people are disappointed by is that a guy like me, I get the NHL package. And one of the reasons I get the NHL package, because I love watching the Canadian games. I like watching Hockey Night in Canada. I also like watching my Dallas Stars, but I can't watch my Dallas Stars on the NHL package because it's blacked out locally. And that presents an issue, so therefore I have to get Bally's.
Yes.
So that's another thing where if it wasn't blacked out, that would allow me more options. And with what's going on in Dallas-Fort Worth right now, the options are limited as far as if you want to watch Rangers, Mavericks, Stars, you essentially have to get someone that has Bally's, and that's limited. It's not DirecTV anymore. It's not Dish. Spectrum has it, yes. AT&T has it. So there are limited options, though. YouTube does not have it. So, it's fascinating, and it does affect a lot of hockey consumers, because to me, I want blanket across the market, 100% opportunity to watch Dallas Stars hockey. But it's weird that it was easier to watch Dallas Stars hockey in Houston when I lived there than up here in Dallas at times.
It's the same way for a lot of sports. Like, I know it's hockey that we're talking about right now, but like, it's for me to watch I'm a big soccer guy, right? For me to watch every English Premier League game, I just have to have a a cable package that's got USA and the rest are on Peacock. That's it. It's that simple. Like, obviously it's two things, but it's that simple. In England, to watch the English Premier League, there are so many different loops and jumps that everyone has to make where it's hard for people to watch games there too. Like it's one of the great fallacies with sports coverage where it's so much easier to be like for example, I'm someone who I've got a 5-year-old kid, right? Who she's starting to pay attention a little more to sports. We'll watch some stuff and everything like that. It's crazy to me, but it would almost as a parent, it would almost behoove you to like help like tell your kid to like, hey, pick a team you like that is outside our television market.
Yes,
right? Because
you're
like then your life will be easier to watch your team.
Yeah.
That's That's so
there are more options than ever, and it seems harder than ever.
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive.
Yes. No, you're absolutely correct. Hey, on next week's podcast, we'll get into Defending Big D had a list of prospects as far as the Stars are concerned and list them. And Sean's going to say, how does this compare to his list? So we'll get into that. So we still have a lot to talk about. Also, with the announcement of different games, one of the cool games is October 29th. Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton, the Battle of Alberta, Edmonton versus Calgary, outdoors. Are you kidding me? This is must-watch TV. The gloves are definitely coming off. It's going to be awesome, and they're playing where the Edmonton CFL team plays. So it's going to be a rocking atmosphere, and I'm super excited about that, and we can dive into future episodes. The Stadium Series for the NHL has been so popular and so awesome. And we'll talk about that on a future episode. I did want to hit again, folks. The time's now if you want to support Sean because Shap Shots, he came out with just follow him on Twitter at Sean Shapiro, and you'll see the thread how you can sign up because Sean's going to concentrate on Dallas Stars news. And there's going to be a lot of articles regarding the Dallas Stars. So that's great value if you follow the Dallas Stars because Sean does an amazing job as far as deep diving into analytics. The other thing is his book's called We Win Here, and we talked about the Texas Stars and the training camp upcoming and down near Austin, and he has some terrific stories that have to do with current NHL players as well as people that are in the Texas organization. So that's two great plugs for my partner in crime, Sean Shapiro, and my friend. This has been a good one, and I'm really enjoying these off-season programs because we're able to dive into like this, like the Spectrum ESPN thing in the NHL, because, what we try to do on this podcast is present issues that I think that sports fans, specifically hockey fans, can relate to. Because if we throw out analytics all day and stuff, it might be over people's head. And what we want to do if we throw out analytics is to explain what the analytics are, what, the Champions League in hockey is, and what these things are, because it's all about education, folks. It's all about making you more of a hockey fan because we're growing this thing together.
Yeah, and if you want to get nerdy on analytics, I do that with my friend Prashant Iyer. I have a one where we get overly in the weeds on analytics, hockey analytics, called Expected by Whom, where it's just a analytics podcast. So if after finishing your Spits and Sud listening, you need something else you listen to Spits and Sud on your ride to work, you need to queue something up for the ride home. Pull up Expected by Whom, and we talk. We get very nerdy on that one.
Yeah, so. We need to have him on sometime. We need to have him on.
Yeah, we should.
We really should. Absolutely, so, we do, because that's Sean's second favorite podcast to be on.
Yes, exactly.
So that's going to do it, folks, for today. Thank you so much for listening. For Sean Shapiro, I'm Gavin Spittle. This is 105.3 The Fan. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Spits and Suds.